You're not suffering because the world is cruel, though it can be. You're suffering because a part of you, deep down, is choosing it. Not consciously, not deliberately, but in a way that's so subtle, so insidious, you barely notice it. Freud saw this clearly, and his truth stings. We are not victims of suffering. We are its silent architects. How many times have you sworn to change partners, jobs, or habits, only to rerun the same script with new actors? You've felt it, haven't you? The way you keep circling back to the same pain, the same mistakes, the same regrets. You call it bad luck. You say, but it was them. Or, well, yeah, I guess that's life. Blah, blah, blah. Freud called it repetition compulsion, the mind's twisted pull toward familiar wounds. We don't just endure suffering, we repeat it, chase it, and sometimes even need it. The patient cannot remember the whole of what is repressed in him, and what he cannot remember may be precisely the essential part of it. He is obliged to repeat the repressed material as a contemporary experience instead of remembering it as something in the past. How many times have you found yourself in the same emotional ditch, wondering how you got there again? The toxic relationship you swore you'd leave, the job you hate but won't quit, the self-sabotage that creeps in just when things start going well. It's the mind's bizarre habit of replaying unresolved pain like a broken record. It's not that you want to hurt, it's that your psyche is stuck, obsessively returning to what it hasn't processed. Think about it. That argument you keep having with your partner, the one that always ends the same way. Why do you keep having it? Why do you keep choosing the same kind of partner, the same kind of fight? Your mind is trying to solve something, to fix a wound it doesn't even know how to name, but instead of healing, it just digs the wound deeper. And the worst part is that you're not even aware you're doing it. How many times have you promised yourself you'd change, only to find yourself right back where you started? That's repetition compulsion. And it's the first clue that suffering isn't just happening to you, it's also happening by you. Deep in the shadows of your mind, there's a part of you that believes you deserve to suffer. Maybe it's guilt from something you did, something you didn't do, or even something you've convinced yourself you're responsible for. It doesn't have to be rational. The unconscious doesn't care about logic. It's why you might feel a vague sense of shame you can't explain, a weight that follows you no matter how good your life looks on the outside. Suffering, in this sense, becomes a form of self-punishment, a way to atone for sins you might not even remember, or sins you may have never committed. How many times have you felt like you're paying for something you can't even name, or sabotaging yourself just when things start going well? You get the promotion, but you start slacking off. You meet someone great, but you pick a fight over nothing. That's not bad luck. That's your mind saying, you don't deserve this happiness. Let's balance the scales. Freud saw this as the psyche's attempt to maintain a twisted kind of justice. Now let's go deeper. When suffering becomes a constant, it stops being just a phase. It becomes who you are, your identity. You don't just feel pain, you become the person who feels pain. Think about the people you know who always have a crisis, who always have a story of how life has wronged them. Maybe you're one of them, a chronic complainer who bonds over shared misery, the tortured artist who fears joy would dull their creativity, the survivor who introduces themselves with their trauma first. Over time, this sense of fragility stops being something you experience and starts being something you are. You're the one who's been through it all, the one who survived betrayal, loss, injustice. It's not just a story, it's your personality. And here's the trap. Once suffering is your identity, Letting go of it feels like letting go of yourself. Who would you be without your pain? What would you talk about? How would you connect with others? It's terrifying to imagine a life without it, because feeling miserable has become your anchor, your proof of existence. How many times have you clung to a grudge, not because it felt good, but because it felt familiar? That's your identity talking. And it's why you keep choosing pain over peace. This leads to an even stranger truth. Suffering feels safe. Freud's work on neuroses shows us that the mind loves what it knows, even if what it knows is misery. These are your neurotic comfort zones, the mental spaces where pain feels more natural than joy. Happiness, success, peace. They're foreign, unpredictable, risky. The ongoing hurt, on the other hand, is predictable. You know how to handle it. You know how to navigate the ache, how to survive the disappointment. Many who knew Marilyn Monroe said she feared being truly happy or stable. Despite global fame and admiration, she repeatedly returned to emotionally toxic relationships and destructive habits. She was offered roles that could have redefined her career, but often sabotaged these opportunities. Monroe once admitted that she felt as if joy were a trick waiting to vanish. It's crazy how your mind would rather cling to the familiar hell of pain than risk the unknown of happiness. Once feeling miserable becomes your identity, you start to find power in it, not the kind of power that lifts you up, but a shadowy, manipulative leverage that keeps others offering you attention, sympathy, or favors. This is control through victimhood. Being the one who's hurt, the one who's been wronged, gives you a strange kind of leverage. You're probably that one person who always counters other people's problems with something darker from your own life. That's because you don't have to take responsibility for your choices because life did this to you. You don't have to face hard decisions because you're too busy surviving. And others? They can't demand too much from you because, well, look at all you've been through. How you bring up your struggles to steer a conversation or gain sympathy. It's not always conscious, but it's there. Victimhood becomes a shield, a way to control how others see you and what they expect from you. And here's where it gets even more seductive. Suffering starts to feel noble. This is the trap of moral superiority through pain. You begin to see your pain as proof of your virtue, your endurance, your depth. The world tells you this too. Think of all the stories that glorify the wounded hero, the martyr who rises above. Almost every major religion encodes this idea deep into its structure. Christianity places the broken, the meek, and the persecuted at the center of salvation. Islam calls believers to care for the suffering and promises that trials are a test of faith and a pathway to nearness with God. In Judaism, the one who suffers is often seen as closer to divine understanding. Across traditions, suffering earns you a kind of moral immunity. You're not just hurting, you are now untouchable, deserving of reverence, patience, and love. That's why you start to wear your pain like a badge, a sign that you're better, stronger, more authentic than those who seem to glide through life unscathed. Suffering makes you feel special, chosen, even righteous. But here's the catch. That pride keeps you stuck. Letting go of suffering means letting go of that moral high ground, and that's terrifying. Who would you be if you weren't the one who's overcome so much? Would you still matter? Now, let's talk about the lie that keeps you chained to this cycle. The fantasy of delayed gratification. Deep down, you tell yourself that all this suffering has a purpose, that it's building toward something greater. You endure the pain because you believe it will pay off. Redemption, success, meaning, a happily ever after. It's the story of the struggling artist who makes it big, the underdog who triumphs, the saint who finds paradise. But the promise of future reward is often just a coping mechanism, a way to justify the pain you're too afraid to let go of. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, if I just get through this, everything will be okay? How many times have you clung to the hope that your pain is an investment in a better tomorrow? But what if that tomorrow never comes? What if the only thing your suffering guarantees is more suffering? The truth is, this fantasy keeps you running on a treadmill, chasing a finish line that keeps moving. And the longer you run, the harder it is to step off. How much longer will you wait for the payoff that might never arrive? If suffering has become who you are, then breaking free means redefining yourself. This is where most people falter. They're afraid of who they'll be without their pain. The first thing to understand is that the anguish you feel isn't random. It's a pattern, and patterns can be broken. Every time you repeat a painful cycle, your mind is signaling an unresolved wound. The key is to stop running from it and start facing it. You don't have to erase your past, but you can stop letting it define your future. Victimhood feels safe because it lets you avoid responsibility, but it also keeps you small. Real power comes from making hard choices. It comes from the answers to questions like, what am I trying to resolve by staying in this pain? What guilt am I punishing myself for? What do I want? And what am I willing to do to get it? As for that sense of moral superiority, you have to realize that vulnerability doesn't make you better or worse than anyone else. It just makes you human. The world doesn't owe you a medal for your pain, and you don't need one to prove your worth. Your value isn't in how much you've endured, it's in what you do with the life you have. Start celebrating your strengths, not your scars. Suffering isn't a down payment on a better future. It's just suffering. You repeat it because it's unresolved. You punish yourself because you feel guilty. You define yourself by it because it's familiar. You control through it because it's safe. You glorify it because it feels noble. And you endure it because you believe it'll pay off, but it won't. The world isn't going to stop being hard, but you can at least stop making it harder. The only gap between the caged and the free is the heartbeat that says, enough. Or you can shove your fists through every wall you built around yourself. Being remembered only for your suffering is an exception for Jesus and the like. In all other cases, history remembers heroes because they turn pain into fuel, not because they nurse scars. So stop polishing your pity and ignite something worthwhile. No cosmic force is coming to rescue you. Every second you worship your misery is a second you steal from your own life. You think fate's on your side? Fate's too busy for your drama. The only thing that separates the stuck from the savage is movement. Literal, metaphorical, emotional. Stop glorifying your wounds and start charting your escape route, because legends aren't born in pity parties. They're forged in relentless, inconvenient growth. Misery, even if it's objectively tangible, is a comfortable lie you tell yourself. Make one choice today that your past self would despise. Then make one tomorrow. Before you know it, victim will be a dusty word in your rearview mirror, and the world will remember only the force you became. Freud argued that unless you confront the repressed impulses lurking beneath your ego, you'll keep sabotaging every step forward. So bring them into the light and take back control. Now, if you've made it this far, drop a truth in the comments that proves the victim act is over and the real work's begun.